And welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with, the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you so much for checking out the episode. If you're watching, don't forget to hit subscribe. We put out new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And today I am so excited to be talking with Joan Osborne, who's back with a new record called Trouble And Strife. It's good to see you again.
Yay, she's back.
She's back.
Just when you thought you got rid of her.
I mean, it's not like it hasn't been too long. You know, you did the Dylan's cover record that we loved, and that was only a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess because of what you're singing about this time and versus where you were coming from, I'm not so surprised, but I hope you don't mind jumping into the deep end right away, because you've called this your most political album. Is that right?
Oh, yes. No question about it. This is really kind of a change for me to write songs that are very political in nature. I've never really thought that I had the ability to write political songs. You know, I would look at artists like John Lennon or Bob Marley or Woody Guthrie and just feel like I didn't have anything that was near any sort of perspective that was in that same league, so I should just leave it alone. But there, you know, for a number of compelling reasons, I just changed my mind about that for this album cycle.
Yeah. What were those compelling reasons? I mean, I'm going to say, obviously, the 2016 election, I'm sure, plays a part of that, but was there anything else specifically that made you really kind of go for it?
Well, it was definitely a response to the 2016 election and to, you know, many of the things that are being revealed about the workings of our government and who our government is working for, and the corruption and the abuse of power that's going on. So it's certainly in response to that. You know, I'm also a parent and I have a daughter, and I'm very aware all the time of how my decisions and my actions are going to impact her future. And, you know, we all talk about, oh, this, you know, we have to do this and that for the next generations. And you know, that's true, but it becomes a lot less abstract when you are thinking about your own child, your own nieces and nephews, and you think about the kind of lives that they're going to be able to have in the future. So that was part of the impetus for writing political songs. And then also, you know, my experience doing that deep dive into the Bob Dylan material with the 2017 record and touring behind that a lot and really living with those songs day in and day out. You know, I began to sort of see how he was able to write songs which, you know, used their language in a way that created these sort of quasi-mythical characters and these, you know, these stories and like using biblical allusions and all that stuff that made these songs sound like they were talking about what's happening politically in the world right now. And yet the songs were written, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago sometimes. And when they first came out, they sounded like they were talking specifically about what was going on. So I really thought about how was it that he was able to do that he was able to write a song that could be universal and that could be relevant decades after it's first written, but still feel like it's very pointed. And so I really tried to learn from him in that way and incorporate that when I was, you know, that idea when I was writing these songs.
Yeah, because to me that would seem you're writing more about the human experience, I guess, than you would be pointing out, then you'd be calling out specific names or whatever. You know, because as you go through here, it is more than just politics. You know, we get that from the first single that we heard, Boy, Don't You Know. I mean, you know, what a powerful moment, first off, and what a great song. Compliments there as well. But, you know, so at first, because when I first heard it, I thought, okay, maybe she's talking on this subject of trans, but I guess it's actually much more than that.
Well, it's funny. The song was kind of the springboard for it was I was in Scotland and I read this article about a local school district, and one of the administrators was talking about how there were so many kids, 11, 12 years old and even younger, who were expressing this desire to, to be trans and to transition from mostly from female to male, but also from male to female. And she was saying, of course we want to support these kids in whatever they need, but we have to maybe look at what are maybe the societal pressures on these kids that could be part of their desire to do this. And I started, I thought that's a really good point, and I started thinking about, what if you're, a young girl, an adolescent girl or a pre-adolescent girl? On the one hand, you get this message, of all the time of, you can do whatever you want, you can be whoever you want, and there's nothing standing in your way. And then on the other hand, you turn on the TV and you see things like the Kavanaugh hearings, or you understand that it's really not this sort of wonderland of equality that you're going to be growing up into. So maybe that's part of the reason that you look at someone of the opposite gender with envy and say, I don't want to deal with this stuff. I'd rather do that instead. And that was kind of the sort of the launching pad, if you will, for that song.
Yeah, what an interesting kind of twist isn't the right word, but I guess angle to approach something like that. Like I go back and I read a lot of interviews, especially when you were coming up in the early 90s and mid 90s and stuff like that. And I won't pretend like I know what it was like, but if you were a woman artist, one of the questions you got was, what's it like to be a woman artist? And what a bullshit question that was. And at least now it seems like the questions, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but at least the questions are a bit more thought out and deeper, where it's well beyond that part. And I think it is more about what you're talking about, obviously about feminism, and
mm-hmm. I mean, in this moment, it seems like that, or maybe it's just that I have been around so long that they've, those questions of what's it like to be being a woman in rock or whatever. It's just like those don't really apply to me, whereas they might apply more to someone just coming up or whatever. I don't know. I never really had much of an answer for that, and I felt like it was just sort of, because the questions were asked in this moment when there were a lot of successful female artists, and it was like a woman in rock moment. It just seemed like the easiest question to ask, So, but I never really had a good answer for that, and I still don't.
Yeah, lazy journalism really is what it probably all came down to.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
You guys got to get it together, man.
Excuse me. There's another song on here, and that's the thing, is like you can kind of throw darts at any song, and I feel like you're going to be tackling a big subject in this. Another early single is it's What's That You Say, and what we're hearing isn't something I can understand exactly because it's in Spanish, but I can sort of feel what's happening. The intro is all in Spanish, and then the story continues throughout the song. Could you tell us what we are hearing there?
Yeah, that is a woman named Ana Maria Rea, who was an immigrant to this country. She came with her family from Mexico when she was a very young girl. And the song, for me, the song came from this place of hearing this conversation about immigration in our country, and being really dismayed by all the people who feel like this is a negative thing for our country. Because what I've always understood about immigration is that people who come here from other countries bring their energy, and they bring their cultural traditions, and they bring their ambition, and they add to this country, and they always have. So it's really dismaying to me that somebody would think that immigrants should not be welcome here. So I wanted to write a song that really celebrated the kind of person who comes to this country maybe as a child, and makes this place better because of being here. And I wrote the song, and it was all finished, and there were these big instrumental sections that didn't have any singing in them, and I kept hearing a spoken word thing in there, and I didn't want it to be me, but I thought, why don't I turn the mic over to someone who has actually, lived this experience. And we talk a lot about immigrants and immigration, but I don't think we really listen to the immigrants themselves very much. So I wanted to allow somebody to have, to use that moment and that platform in the song. And I contacted this group called Raices, which is an organization that's helping people at our southern border who are trying to come into this country from Central America and from Mexico, and dealing with this really dehumanizing and disorganized system, and this awful system. So Raíces has been assisting these people with their legal asylum claims, things like that. And I am a fan of their work, and I reached out to them and I said, do you think you could connect me with someone who would be willing to talk about their own story? And they said, yes, we know just the person. And that's when they connected me with Anna Maria. And we had a conversation. I interviewed her. She was in a studio in Austin, Texas, and I was here in New York. And I interviewed her for hours. It was about 3 hours. And it was a very emotional conversation. The both of us were crying at certain points, through this interview. And she talked about her whole life story of being a little girl in Mexico. Her father had been kidnapped, and even though he was eventually returned, they never felt safe again in Mexico, and her parents decided to emigrate to the United States. And so she had to leave her cousins and her grandmother and all these people that she had grown up with. She didn't know if she was ever going to see them again. It was a very moving story, and it kind of goes on from there. But she became one of these people who really gives back to the community and really makes America better for her being here.
Yeah, no, it's an absurd idea that immigrants wouldn't let anybody, I mean, when we started, the imaginary line that divides a piece of land, and the whole concept of that is, you would think, but this far into the future that we'd be past that.
Well, I mean, I think it's an effective tool for people to demonize people coming from outside this country. That's an effective tool that some people are able to use, and it's an effective strategy sometimes. But for me, I think, what a boring place this would be, especially coming from a cultural perspective and an artistic perspective. The thing that's so great about the arts in America is that it comes from people who come to this country from elsewhere and bring their cultural traditions, bring their music, bring their storytelling, bring their cuisine, bring whatever it is. And then those different traditions combine and create these brand new forms that are so exciting. You don't have Gene Kelly dancing to Singing in the Rain without all these different, Irish and African American and all these different traditions coming together and mixing up and creating something new. So I just feel like it's incredible that anyone would think that that's a bad idea.
Yeah. And by the way that's mixed, her voice within all of the instrumentation, I mean, that can't be easy. And it just perfect. It's, to use the studio slang, it's so in the pocket, it's really well done.
We had we have a great engineer who, the guy who recorded it, we did the whole record in my basement studio, and the guy who recorded it and then also mixed it, his name is Matt Shane, and he's an amazing engineer. He works a lot with the Flight of the Conchords guys and has done their television work and also their live work a lot. And he's, just so happens to be a friend of ours, and we've been really, really fortunate to be able to work with him.
For people that don't know, because you have been based in New York for a very long time now, but you're from right outside of here in Louisville. What's that been like for you to kind of see what's happening, back in the homeland territory, with everything that has been happening here over the last few months?
I mean, it doesn't shock me that, something like, the death of Breonna Taylor would happen. I guess what I can take from it, is that the response to it from the community and from, the city and from the state are, from the people actually who live in Kentucky and who live in Louisville. That response has been heartening to me, because I think it's easy for people who are not from the South or from, Kentucky, Tennessee, these areas, to sort of look at the South as this monolith and as this very conservative, kind of place. And I always try to tell people, it's not a monolith. There's all different kinds of people, and there's all different kinds of, political opinions. And, part of what has been heartening to me in this tragic moment is the way that people have responded to this and have gone out into the streets and have tried to expose these injustices and do something about them. And it's happening in Brooklyn and it's happening all over. But I was very heartened to see people out in the streets as well in Louisville.
Yeah, and they're still out there too. I mean, the idea that protests can't, doesn't ultimately fix or remove things, I should say, we're showing out is not true because, and who knows how everything's going to play out. But it was yesterday we got word that the LMPD just hired,
Mm-hmm.
they're put in charge the very first Black woman
Mm-hmm.
to run the whole thing. So that's something, and that's because of what's happening out in the streets, and it's
Yeah. I think that people who try to tell you that protest doesn't matter are the ones who don't want you to protest because they like things to be the way they are. There's this line that I can't remember who said it, but it sticks with me so much. It's the easiest way to take away someone's power is to convince them that they don't have any.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to keep that in mind and think about, what's my power in this moment? What can I do?
Yeah. Well, I want to take a little transition here away from the record Trouble and Strife, because a couple of your first mainstream records had big birthdays this year. One, Relish, turned 25 earlier this year. Righteous Love turns 20 in October, I believe.
Yes.
And both, I mean, they're classics. I know there's not a lot more that you probably haven't said about both of these records here. I think at first I'm just going to throw some compliments at you. Right Hand Man, one of the best vocals, one of my favorite vocals, that take in there. Like, you've got a growl to, and one that you've used before and since too. What do you remember about recording that song?
Oh, yeah. I remember being in the studio. We were in Westchester, New York. We had rented this house, and we were kind of trying to recreate the sort of Music from Big Pink thing where the band all moves in together in a house and we all spend night and day working on the record and that sort of thing. So we were in this big house with a giant great room in the front with a big stone fireplace, and it had one of those glassed in porches, and they turned that glassed in porch into the vocal booth. So I was there with my headphones on and just going over the song again and again and again. And it is a pretty high energy vocal. So it took a lot out of me with every take, and I would need to kind of gather myself again in between takes. But we did it a whole bunch of times. And I remember the teenage daughter of the person who had rented us the house was there watching and listening. And after we were done with the vocal, she kind of sidled up to me and was like, "That was really cool." And I thought, yes, teenage girl thinks it's cool. We've done something. This is great.
Youth in America are on our side.
Yeah.
Oh, it is such a powerful and fun song to listen to. Of course, One of Us would go on to take a life of its own. I guess I'm more curious, it'd be a few years later on his, I think it was the Emancipation record, right? But Prince would cover that.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? Did you have any kind of professional relationship with him at that point?
I did not have a relationship with him when he decided to cover the song. He started, talking in interviews and stuff about the song and about how much he liked it, and saying really nice complimentary things about me. And I had been a Prince fan for decades, and he was such a legend, and so I was just. I mean, I was I thought people were kidding me when they first told me about it, but I was just so thrilled and so honored. And then I was actually able to meet him because he reached out and invited me to this party that he was having in New York. And I went to this party, and it was like the fantasy dream party of being, like a famous rock star or something. I got there, and Sheryl Crow was there, and LL Cool J was there, and Lenny Kravitz was there, and Questlove was DJing, and everybody was out on the floor, and it was like this amazing thing. And one of Prince's handlers kind of came and grabbed me and ushered me into this little back room where he was sitting all by himself. And I had just been dancing like crazy, so I was all sweaty, and he sort of ushered me into this room, and there was Prince, and he's like this tall. He's a tiny little guy. And, I came in, I'm all sweaty and flustered and breathing hard. And he was like, "Hi, it's nice to meet you." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad to meet you. I just want to give you a big hug." And he just sort of looked me up and down and said, "Well, words can do a lot."
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's cool. I love you.
Oh, but what a great story to have. You know,
Yeah,
great
so
moment.
that was me meeting Prince.
Yeah. And you know, and quickly with Righteous Love, so that followed up, but it was a bit of a wait there. I mean, 5 years, a lot of things changed in popular
Yeah.
culture and music at the time. Um, like, what was it? Did it feel like it was too long? Did you like what was the reasoning for that? And did you feel like still a
Uh,
part of the popular culture as you had been?
mhm. Well, I think I have to take responsibility for it being that long of a time. I think the success that the Relish album had, while I'm so grateful for it, and there were so many things that were wonderful about it, I ended up feeling that I was under an awful lot of pressure, and most of that pressure came from me to do something as a follow up that was going to be just as successful or that was going to be better than that record. And I just really, I tried and I tried and I turned in some things to the label, and they said, no, we're not going to release this. And I kind of twisted myself in knots to try to make it happen, and it just took me a long time to get around that. And that's just what it had to be. It was not a fun time, and I was, I'd sort of wake up every day with this weight on me of like, oh God, I need to follow this record up, and so it wasn't a great fun period. But that was a long time ago, and I feel like right now is a great time to be a creator, at least in my life, because at the age I'm at, I kind of don't care what anyone thinks of me anymore, which is such a liberating thing. So I'm more excited than ever to just try things and write new things, and really, just as long as I like it, then I'm cool with that. And I'm fortunate enough to have enough of an audience that has stuck with me through the years, where I can do that. I can put a record out, and I can, well, at least before COVID, I could go on tour and make a living and support myself and support my family. And I don't have to worry so much about some overarching, pop hits or whatever, although who even knows what that means anymore.
Right.
But I'm in a very fortunate position as an artist to be able to kind of do what I want and please myself and still make a living at it. And, at this stage. So I'm nothing but grateful about that.
You just beautifully brought it right back around to the present day. I appreciate that
Oh, how
too.
I did that? Yeah.
You do the seg, so I don't have to. That's I'm always awkward at it, but it's true. I mean, we love what you do, and that's no secret, to any of our listeners here in Louisville at WFPK. We love playing your music. We absolutely love with Trouble and Strife.
Well, thank you. And right back at you too. FPK is such a great station, and I don't live in Louisville anymore, but I do visit a lot because I still have family there, and that's the first thing I turn my dial to is FPK, and I'm always interested to hear what you guys are playing. And even online, I'll be somewhere and I'll tune in, and it's great to feel that kind of sense of hometown pride about the station.
Absolutely. Well, we'll keep doing it. We'll keep playing it. You keep making the music. We'll keep playing it. It's an
All
easy,
right, it's a
easy
deal.
give and take here. Joan, it's been so great talking to you. Congratulations on Trouble and Strife. We do love the record. It's an important record, and thanks for using the moment to talk about these things too.
Well, thank you so much, Kyle. I really appreciate talking with you.
All right.